There are people who feel everything, but show almost nothing. People whose hearts are loud, but whose mouths stay quiet. People who love deeply, but hide it so well that no one ever notices. If that feels familiar, stay with me. Some people love softly. They care gently. They feel intensely, but the world rarely sees it because their emotions live inside them, not on their face, not in their voice, not in their actions, unless you look closely. If you've ever held back feelings that were overflowing inside you, if you've ever cared deeply but stayed silent, this video will feel like someone finally understands you. There is a quiet way of feeling that only certain hearts understand. Maybe yours is one of them. You don't show emotions easily, not because you don't have them, but because they feel too precious, too real, too vulnerable to place in someone else's hands. You notice everything, every tone, in else's hands. You notice everything, every tone, every silence, every change in energy, every tiny shift in someone's eyes, voice, or mood. Your heart picks up details that most people overlook. But even though you feel so deeply, you rarely say what's inside. You think about reaching out, but pause. You consider sharing something personal, but decide it's safer not to. You want to express what you feel, but the words never make it out. Your love, your care, your longing. It all exists quietly beneath the surface, not because you don't want to be understood, but because you learned that your emotions deserve protection. Your feelings aren't loud, they're layered, they're nuanced, they're tender. You don't love with noise. You love with depth. You love in silence. You love in presence. You love in consistency. You love in all the ways that don't require attention or recognition. This is your way, the quiet way. But the world rarely notices quiet love, and that's where the pain begins. People aren't born hiding their emotions, they learn it. You learned it. Somewhere in your life, your feelings weren't met with softness. They weren't welcomed. They weren't understood. They weren't heard. Maybe you grew up in a place where emotions were inconvenient, where crying made you a problem, where vulnerability made people uncomfortable, where sensitivity was too much, where everything you felt was treated as something you should shrink. So you shrank it. Or maybe you tried to express your feelings, once your real feelings, and someone used them against you, mocked them, dismissed them, ignored them, and you learned not consciously, but deeply, that being open was unsafe. Or maybe you loved someone openly, fully, honestly, and they left, or changed, or failed to treat your heart with care, and your chest learned a painful lesson. Next time, be more careful. You may not remember the exact moment your heart began to protect itself, but something in you shifted. You became quiet, not because your feelings disappeared, but because you stopped believing they would be handled gently. Sometimes the world teaches us to silence ourselves long before we understand what that silence costs. You grew up. You became stronger. You survived. You learned self-control. You learned composure. You learned emotional discipline. But underneath all of that discipline lives someone who feels deeply and wants desperately to be understood. It's not your fault that you learned to hide your feelings. Hiding them was how you learned to survive. People who hide their emotions don't always realize they're doing it. So let me gently show you the signs you've been carrying. You pull away when you start to care more. You become quieter when something hurts you. You pretend you're fine even when you're breaking internally. You avoid saying how you feel because you're afraid of being misunderstood. You wait for the other person to make the first move because you fear seeming needy. You care through actions instead of words. You offer support but rarely ask for it. You hide disappointment to avoid confrontation. You write messages and delete them. You think deeply but express softly. You want closeness but you fear being exposed. And the world sees someone calm, someone strong, someone stable. But inside, your emotions are swirling, loud, intense, overwhelming. The outside version of you doesn't match the one living inside your chest. You're not emotionless. You're emotional in private. You're not distant. You're protecting yourself. You're not quiet. Your voice was just never made to shout. Here is the truth the world needs to understand about you. You hide your feelings because they matter. Because people matter. Because connection matters. Because love matters. You hide what you feel, not because you don't care, but because you care so deeply that losing someone would tear through you. You're afraid of overwhelming people. You're afraid of loving more than the other person does. You're afraid of being misread, misunderstood, or misjudged. You're afraid that if you open your heart fully, someone might walk away, and the hurt would take months or years to recover from. So you love safely, quietly, gently. You don't show too much, because too much feels dangerous. You don't show too little, because too little feels dishonest. You walk the tightrope between care and caution. You're not hiding forever. You're hiding until you're sure it's safe. You're guarding your emotions, because your emotions are powerful, and powerful things need protection. Your heart isn't quiet, it's careful. Opening your heart doesn't mean exposing everything. It doesn't mean oversharing. It doesn't mean turning your vulnerability into something dramatic. You don't need to open the door wide, you just need to unlock it. Here's how you begin. Share one small truth. Not the whole story, just the first sentence. I cared about that. I felt something. I was a little hurt. I wanted to say something but didn't. Tiny honesty is still honesty. 2. Let your feelings exist without judging them. You're not too much. You're not dramatic. You feel the way you feel, and that feeling is valid. 3. Express yourself in small actions. A gentle message, a small gesture, a moment of presence. You communicate love in ways louder than words. 4. Share slowly with emotionally safe people. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Let trust build gradually instead of all at once. 5. Stop apologizing for being sensitive. Your sensitivity isn't a flaw. It's a sign of emotional depth, empathy, and intelligence. 6. Let someone in even a little. Just enough so your heart can breathe again. Healing doesn't come from grand openings. It comes from a single gentle moment where your heart feels seen without being threatened. If you're someone who hides your feelings, even when you care deeply, please listen closely. You are not cold. You are not distant. You are not emotionally unavailable. You are someone who learned to protect your heart because no one else protected it for you. Your silence is not emptiness, it is protection. It is memory. It is survival. But your heart is still full, still soft, still hopeful, still longing to be understood. And one day you will meet someone who makes your emotions feel safe, someone who listens to the things you don't say, someone who reads your quietness as love, not distance, someone who understands the tenderness you carry beneath your calm surface. Until that day, remember this. Your quiet heart is not a weakness. It is a rare kind of strength, a gentle kind, a deep kind, a beautiful kind, and it deserves to be held with understanding, patience, and love. Thank you for listening. If this spoke to you, I hope you'll join me in the next video why you feel not enough no matter what you do.